A single dad of 5 is considering launching a legal challenge against the British Columbia government after being ordered not to leave any of his kids under the age of 10 alone. That order came after someone complained that Adrian Crook was letting his 4 oldest kids ride the city bus to school without an adult. Now, he says, keep this in mind, he says he spent nearly 2 years teaching them how to navigate the 45-minute route and equip them with GPS-enabled cell phones to track their location. Crook says explaining the new rule to his kids has been difficult and is an attack on parents' choices on how to raise their kids. Adrian Crook joins me now from Vancouver. Adrian, a single dad of 5, God love you, congratulations, well done. I'm going to heap all the praise on you for that, but let's get right into this. Why did you want your kids to take the bus?
A number of reasons, really, not the least of which is actually, ironically, safety. The bus is about 24 times safer than any other mode of transportation, including walking or especially driving. So I did not feel comfortable putting them in a car and driving them to and from school. And, quite frankly, teaching them independence is a fantastic gift and really our number one responsibility as parents.
Adrian, so then you find out that someone anonymously complained and that all of a sudden you couldn't do this anymore. What was your reaction?
Disappointment, obviously. I'm aware that that's sort of a risk in the world we live in right now. It's very fear-based, not very fact-based. So, over the course of the 2 years I was training the kids to do this, I had documented the whole process on my blog, my 5 Kids, 1 Condo blog, and I was sort of not necessarily anticipating it, but aware that something like this might happen in the culture we live in that sort of values helicopter parenting over giving kids this independence.
So, you put your 4 kids on the bus. That must have provided them with a certain amount of independence, but also gave you a little more freedom. I'm guessing when this rule came down, all of a sudden, your back was against the wall. You had a lot more obligations.
Yeah, it wasn't anything I wasn't already used to. Obviously, I'd spent the bulk of those 2 prior years taking the bus to and from school with them. But this past year has been a return to almost a worse state, quite frankly, because in addition to having to take the bus with them twice a day, over 3 hours of my day, I can't let any kid under 10 do really anything on their own. So even crossing the street to go to the corner store is out of the picture for the ones under 10, which I think that, what kid doesn't like going to the corner store to get a treat? That's been one of the tougher things. They actually kind of enjoy having me on the bus with them, not that they need me on the bus, but yeah, that's been tough for sure.
So Adrian, you've been steeped in this conversation for a while now, so I'll ask your opinion. Where do you think parental rights should end and where should government authority begin?
I think it's pretty clear, and the ministry here in BC and elsewhere in the country, they have a fairly clear mandate to act in cases of abuse or neglect, outright neglect. In this case, the ministry did tell me that they didn't consider this a case of neglect, that I had, quote, gone above and beyond what any reasonable parent could be expected to do, and that there was no sort of precipitating incident that led to their involvement. So in cases like that, where you've got really no incident and this is based on a clear sense of doing what's right for kids and they aren't in danger, it isn't a case of neglect, I don't think that should be a case for ministry intervention.
So do you think that this is a case, just generally speaking, across the country? I remember being a kid and this is sort of the notion of taking my bike out to go visit friends. That wasn't unheard of at the age of 8, 9, or 10 years old. Is it a case of just this slowly creeping fear that has entered our lives and we sort of didn't notice, and one day we woke up and 8-year-old kids, 9-year-old kids were simply not allowed to do the things that we used to be able to do?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to lay the blame at your doorstep or anything, but media definitely plays into that. We are way more aware than we used to be of every last thing happening around the world, and that's not necessarily a good thing sometimes because it colors our impression of how likely these things are to happen. So when we do look at statistics and probability, however, it's quite clear that things like kidnappings are not something we should necessarily be afraid of on a daily basis, and it's more likely things like traffic accidents are the things that will hurt our kids.
Lastly, we only have a little bit of time left. You're considering a legal challenge here. Where are you in that process?
We are in the middle of the ministry's own internal review of the procedures, at least around this decision, and based on what we get back from that, we'll be taking it to that next step, which would be a legal challenge. And we were fortunate enough to have raised about $45,000 via crowdfunding on GoFundMe for that privilege. So we hope to take it to that level and hopefully push back on behalf of all parents.
Adrian Crook in Vancouver, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure, Ben. Thanks.